My name is Damon Brown. I'm an entrepreneurial coach to side hustlers, solopreneurs, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneurs. Welcome to bringyourworth.tv. Thank you for coming through. I'm live every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Thank y'all for coming through. I always appreciate the love. Oh, shout out to StreamYard. Shout out to StreamYard. I promise they're not the sponsor, but they do support me well. Entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. You can learn more about me at damonbrown.net. Bring Your Worth TV at bringyourworth.tv or at your favorite platform. It's Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time, which is where I'm based. It is hot as heck over here. Hope you guys are staying cool wherever you are in the country, particularly if you're in the United States. Overseas folks, hopefully you guys are cooler over there. You can subscribe for free at the link below or at Damon Brown. Not Damon Brown. You can learn about me at damonbrown.net, but you can also go and subscribe at bringyourworth.tv. You can get my complete collection, the complete Bring Your Worth collection, available at Amazon, available at your favorite platforms, as well as through damonbrown.net. It's all my business books, most of them over the past 8 years. As I say often, I launched my 2 startups and I'm selling the second one while I was at home with my first child, and my wife was doing her traditional job. And our second kid came about 8 years ago. The first book in this series came out around the time he was 4 months old, and then now he just turned 8. So it's crazy. It's crazy, but it gets most of that information in there, most of that insight. So I appreciate all the support. If you want to get a signed copy, come through me, or you can come through your favorite retailers at all the links below. Today's show, I'm so excited. If you get my newsletter over at joindamon.me, you already know the vibes. You already know what's up. You can join for free at joindamon.me, of course. It's about reclaiming your creative power. It's an idea that I've been playing with and thinking about for a while, about how we can actually show up in the world in a certain way and present ourselves in a way we're able to connect through the particular systems that are around us. It could be a mainstream system, it could be an independent system, or it could be something that subverts the system. So we're going to get into those 3 ways. I've done a couple of very popular videos, at least by my standards, a couple of very popular videos on this channel about artists who have done the 3 different ways you can do that, which is mastering the game, disrupting the game, or overpowering the game. We're going to get into that in a second. Super excited. And I'm also excited about our sponsor. Shout out to Shortform, one of my favorite systems to help me keep my books together. If you've been watching this channel, particularly lately, since the beginning of the year, we're midsummer right now, if you watch it live, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, you know how many books I have. Like, shout out to Louise Hay, shout out to Kristen Niff. Like, there's just, Trisha Hersey, shout out to her. Oh man, you're killing it. All these books I'm reading actually all at the same time. I'm surrounded by books. Literally, I don't have to get up from my desk, and I have so many different books. Shortform is a godsend in the sense that it allows you to categorize the books that you have, understand more about the books that you're curious about, and then actually keep tabs on the ones that you frankly might have forgotten about in the swamp of books that you have going on. I actually have a special going on that I was able to negotiate with them. You have a free trial and 21, not 21. You don't get that 2%, 20% off the annual subscription for it. Really good steal. Please go and take advantage of it. We're going to go and hop on and see what it looks like. Oh yeah, there we go. That's the good stuff. All right. So Shortform is this. It allows you to look up different books, different articles, different podcasts, and add them to your library. And then as you add them to your library, you can highlight them, or you can go over their particular user guides, for lack of a better term, that allow you to get the highlights from those things. So one of the books that we're talking about today is 48 Laws of Power. And so there we go. And so that's by my man, Robert Greene. If I can spell his name, Green with the E. There it is. All right. So we got all the different ones. We're going to view all the books. You see, they got almost all his joints on here. And we got 48 Laws of Power. There we go. See, it's already bookmarked because I've already been checking it out. You click on that and start reading. I was already checking it out. Now, this actually isn't the book, but it's actually the way the highlighting the different parts of the book and actually condensing it in a way where you can go through it quickly. I'll give you a really good example of that. So the one-page summary is really simple. That's probably what you're used to with the old school version of that, right? But then you can go a little bit deeper and actually get into the chapters. And one of the ones that we're going to talk about is, see, this actually is proving my point. This book has 48 chapters. If you have a physical version of this book, which it's worth having a sidebar on it. I actually had a physical version of this book that I had for years. And I think someone did the 48 Laws of Power on me because suddenly I don't have it anymore. So I think I let somebody borrow it and they just took it. This is a great example of that, where I have another copy, thank God. But if there's a certain thing that I want to find, then it makes it a lot easier. This is a great one, Law 18. Don't isolate yourself. The law of power. Never isolate yourself when you come under pressure. This just cuts you off from information you need and people who could help you. And when real danger arises, you won't see it coming. Instead, make a point of being outgoing. Contact with others increases your power. We're going to talk about this when it comes to mastering the game, disrupting the game, or overpowering the game. So right here, a chapter in this book with 48 Laws of Power would normally be, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 pages, dense pages, actually probably a little bit more than that. The book is very, very thick. In this case, if I'm talking about it with you, and I got that book ages ago, back when I lived in New Orleans, like 2 decades ago, then I have the basic principles, organization. It's talking about the different stories. The stories are a lot longer, but it summarizes them. It's just a really, really good resource for that. One of the things that I also love about this, and I'll look up my man, Adam Grant. Shout out to Adam. Hope you're doing great wherever you are. You know, he's got the hits on here. So it has his books, including his new one, Hidden Potential. I hope it's doing wonderful for you, Adam. Think Again, which is one of those we're going to talk about. You see it's bookmarked. So I already have a bookmark for today. But down here, this is like the game changer for me. So not only does it organize the different books from, say, Dr. Adam Grant, call him by your correct name, Dr. Adam Grant, but also organizes the podcast and the articles. I know I was looking up Whitney Johnson earlier. Shout out to Whitney, who has a great podcast called Disrupt Yourself. She also has a book related to it. I looked her up earlier today, and they had her article that she had co-written for HBR, for Harvard Business Review. So all the stuff's organized within one thing. Love the way it's organized. And it's allowing me to, again, even with today, if I'm talking about 48 Laws of Power, I'm able to access that quickly without having to worry about things. So for today, I'm actually able to give you guys a discount. So it's a free trial as well as 20% off the annual subscription. Check it out today. I was able to negotiate with them. Super proud to have them as a sponsor. Their logo is over there. So thank you for coming through and making sure that we're able to continue to give the knowledge up there. So shout out to Shortform. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments, or you can go ahead and click on shortform.com/Damon, my first name, and then it'll be right there. You set up your free trial and get into it. And if you want to continue, do the annual subscription. I don't think you're going to regret it. So thanks again for Shortform. All right. So what we're talking about today is how to reclaim your creative power. Live Q&A. If you have any questions about this or comments, how are you feeling about you showing up in the world, getting your information or getting your product or service to the world? What are your biggest challenges with it? Is there a certain strategy that you guys are doing right now that's working for you? Is there a strategy that you're realizing is not working for you? Throw it in the comments. We're about to deep dive into this right now. So the 3 things are mastering the game, disrupting the game, and overpowering the game. And let's go through them one by one. So the first thing you might ask is, like, Damon, what does it mean by mastering the game? And I'm glad you asked that. And mastering the game, the way I define it, it's the first way of 3 different ways. It's understanding the rules so that we can be best at mainstream methods. In other words, you're going into these traditional systems. It could be the publishing industry, which I know fairly well. So the book publishing industry, that's mostly based in New York, in that same little zip code in Midtown Manhattan. It could be the music industry, which is based in another location. It could be Nashville, which has its own type of energy. It could be the video game industry, which has been based in Silicon Valley and LA and a couple other hot spots. Whatever that industry is, you're going to master it to the point where you know exactly what's going on. You know you're going to show up. And I think the key thing is that you know what is expected of you and you know what the boundaries are. You know what your sandbox is. In a recent video that I did about Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole, who are considered the three greatest of right now of this generation as far as rappers. And if you're following music community at all or hip hop community, you know they've had some conflicts earlier today arguing who is the greatest of all time of this generation. They all take different approaches. So they represent the mastering the game, the disrupting the game, and the overpowering the game. And then the key thing here is that when it comes to mastering a game, that's really what Drake's lane is. So he's able to go behind the scenes and accumulate as much power as possible so that he's able to stay relevant. He's able to partner with different artists, even though he's approaching 40 right now, and he's been a rapper slash singer for about 15, almost 20 years. He's able to stay relevant because he's connecting to other artists who are coming up in that system. He's going to know the system better than those known artists know it. And it's the equivalent of me back in the day where I had a regular agent. Shout out to my agents of the past. I had a regular agent in New York, and I would fly to New York once, twice a year. I'd be on the West Coast, and I'd usually do a red eye, land there, take a shower in the airport lounge. Shout out to the airport lounge. Back when I had the executive status for the airlines, and I take a shower there, and then I take a taxi, because it was before Uber, take a taxi over to Midtown Manhattan and have editorial meetings all day. And so when there was a change in the guard as far as the editors, when there was a shift as far as new publishers on the horizon, when my agent said, hey, Damon's based in San Diego or in San Francisco or wherever I was based at that time, even Chicago, when I was living in the Midwest, shout out to Chicago, they could say, oh, okay, Damon, you're going to be here over the next quarter, so over the next 3 months. I'm going to go and have you take a meeting with so-and-so, and then go and have a drink with them, and then meet with this person. And I would fly in regularly, even though I was not a local. People thought I was from the East Coast. I'm originally from the East Coast, but people thought I lived there. That's what I mean by mastering the system. The system was, in publishing, you have to be present. Publishing, at least at the time, was 100% based in New York. Talking 15, 20 years ago, 100% based in New York. And so you're coming through there and you have to be there regularly, have that face time. That's part of mastering the game. I was mastering the game when it came to traditional publishing. That's why I just did my 27th book. That's why that first dozen books, once I got the first book, it came out in rapid succession because I was always in New York, right? So many friends that I have in New York, because I came there so often, they're just expecting me to be there a few times a year. There's power in understanding what the limitations are, what's expected of you, and then hitting those particular marks. The challenge with that, if you're trying to master the game, is that you're going to be working within that sandbox and you can't really leave it. Another example I gave in a video, and all these videos that I'm talking about are right below in the links, is me talking about Michael Jackson, Prince, and Jay-Z, who represented respectively mastering the game, which was MJ, disrupting the game, which was Prince, always a rebel, and then overpowering the game, which was Jay-Z. When it came to Michael Jackson, it was him, again, getting power behind the scenes, similar to Drake, where he ended up owning the Beatles catalog and all these other things behind the scenes. He swept the Grammys because he knew what the Grammy presenters and the Grammy voters wanted to hear. He kept going for getting that number one spot because he knew that that mattered within the system he was in. He was mastering the system, as opposed to, say, a rebel like Prince, or later on we'll talk about Kendrick Lamar, who are going against the system, or someone like Jay-Z, or, and consequently J. Cole, who actually ended up working with Jay-Z, and how they end up being outside of the system. The challenge is that, again, with Drake and with MJ, particularly with Michael Jackson, until his death, he was within that system. He couldn't quite leave the system because he didn't have the strength or apparatus to leave the system. Part of that was because he was independent, or because independence wasn't as available, when he was in his prime back in the 80s and 90s. That's true. But then even you look at Drake right now, who arguably has been in his prime for the past 3, 4, 5 years, and he still hasn't left to start his own independent system. And that's because he's been busy mastering the system. So when you master the system, Just like me flying back and forth to New York, back when I used to work with the traditional publishing industry, you're actually dependent on that system. That's kind of how it works. And the 48 Laws of Power is an excellent parallel to this, which I'll throw that up there as well. If you guys want to grab the book, it's definitely worth grabbing, or you can go and check it out on Shortform, link below. In fact, I would recommend you check it out on Shortform first, see if it's your flow, and then go and grab the book. It's an excellent way to talk about how power flows, because that's what we're really talking about when it comes to you getting your art and reclaiming your creative power, is we're talking about how you can actually make an impact in the world with the art, with the creativity, your product or service that you're doing, and do it in a certain way where you're able to retain that power. And that could be joining the system, it could be disrupting the system, or it could be totally subverting the system and going around it. When it comes to mastering the system, you have to read the 48 Laws of Power. Whether it's MJ or Drake, those examples, they understood the 48 Laws of Power, even though MJ obviously was doing it well before what's his name? Robert Greene. Shout out to Robert Greene, was probably even born, or definitely before the book came out. But it's definitely worth checking it out. We have this wealth of knowledge, whether it's short form or getting the books ourselves. We just have this great opportunity to take advantage of these resources that, frankly, MJ and back in his day, Prince, rest in peace to both of them, didn't have. Speaking of that, if you want to understand more about mastering the game, definitely check out the first video that talked about this at Bring Your Worth TV. It came out about a year ago. It's one of my most popular videos. I love doing this video. I put a lot of energy and work into it. It's Michael Jackson, Prince, Jay-Z, how they mastered business. It's exactly what I'm talking about. It's a blueprint, no pun intended to the Jay-Z fans, but it's a blueprint to how MJ specifically mastered the game. He understood it. And remember, MJ started with his father, Joe Jackson, and his older brothers. He probably started performing shortly after he started walking, and probably was on TV by the time he was probably 6. MJ historians would know better, but he probably started when he was around 6. So younger than my youngest son's age, who was 8. That is amazing. But in those 50 years of life after that, he was able to master the game at such a high level. And it's definitely worth studying. Of course, I talk about Prince, which gets into disrupting the game, which is our next discussion, and then getting into Jay-Z and how you can overpower the game and shift things towards you. Again, today we're talking about how you can reclaim your how you can reclaim your creative power. So as far as mastering the game, that requires, as I talked about, understanding the rules so that we can be the best at mainstream methods. Is that an approach that you're taking? How is that working out for you if you're doing that? Are you like me, where you took that approach for a while and then you shifted your approach? Where does that fit in there? Do you fit in more with, if you're familiar with your music history or you're into them, do you fit more into like a Drake or a Michael Jackson category, where you're going for the Grammys, you're going for the number ones, you're going for the mainstream systems, and you see yourself working within the mainstream systems for the rest of your career? Or do you see yourself doing this for a little while and then actually doing something else? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go and throw them in the comments. Again, I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching and or listening to BringYourWorth.tv. It's every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Whenever possible, I do a live show. It is summertime, so I'm going to be taking a couple Wednesdays off to spend some time with my family for sure. But we have some great episodes coming up for you anyway. Subscribe for free at BringYourWorth.tv or the link below. Of course, the complete Bring Your Worth collection is available everywhere fine books are sold. Because so we talked about mastering the game. It's understanding the rules well enough so that you can actually have success in mainstream methods. So then the question is, how do you disrupt the game? We talked about mastering the game. Now it's about disrupting the game. Disrupting the game sounds exactly what it sounds like. You're actually changing the rules a little bit. To be specific, you're understanding the rules well enough so that you can challenge the system. Understanding the rules well enough so that you can challenge the system. A great example of this would be what Prince had done. And I just talked about earlier in the episode, the video, all the links are below, about MJ, Prince, and Jay-Z and how they mastered the system respectfully. Disrupting the system means coming in, understanding the rules well enough, and then being like, okay, I'm good. And then you're either trying to rock the system to the point where the system falls apart, or at least shake it up enough so that you can do things your particular way. It's the rebel, it's a rebellious streak on there. Prince is an excellent example of this, where he was a prodigy. He played a ridiculous amount of instruments, 24 plus instruments, but he's best known, of course, for his amazing guitar, one of the best guitarists that's ever lived, I would argue. And he signed, I think he was 17, based on the research that I did, he signed a contract with Warner Brothers. And this is back in the 70s, around the time I was born. And so the independent route wasn't really there. Otherwise, he would 100% be an independent artist. And then after a few records, and he started being really prolific, as he always was until his death a few years ago, then he realized the limitations of the contract that he signed. And there were financial limitations to it. There was limitations as far as how many albums he could produce. If you know anything about Prince's music, he not only produced his stuff and created his stuff, but he also did Sheila E., Vanity 6, The Family, The Time. I could just keep going, like the amount of how prolific he was. But that was even limited based on his contract with Warner Brothers. So he learned the rules. And then after Purple Rain came out, where he had the #1 album and #1 movie at the same time, I think he was the first artist to do that, then he totally fought against his contract and finally was able to get out of it. And then he went ridiculously independent and innovating all these different things. Again, I get into it in the video below, Michael Jackson, Prince, and Jay-Z, how they mastered the business. I get a lot deeper into that. So please go ahead and check it out after you watch this. The point is that for those 10-ish years, let's say a decade, all that amazing stuff that Prince did in the last, say, 2 decades of his life, he died around 2006, 2007. Those last couple of decades of his life, all the amazing stuff he was able to do, the triple CDs and, working with Shaka Khan and Larry Graham and then creating his own business around it. Shout out to both of them. Like, this fantastic stuff. A lot of those systems he learned by being in the system. He learned it by being in the system. He was in the Warner Brothers system from, let's say, 79 to 91, 92, so let's say a decade, and then he got out of the system. But he retained all that knowledge, and he knew enough to break the rules. He knew how much each CD needed to cost back when CDs were popular. He knew how to recoup finances after you invest into a product. He learned all these different rules, all these different details, and then he left. I identify a lot with this one, just because with my own journey, whether it's the publishing industry or the other industries I've worked in, a lot of them had to do with me learning the ropes and then leaving. I have 2 degrees in journalism, a master's in magazine publishing. I was one of those precocious kids, so I got my master's when I was around 23 or so. Shout out to Northwestern. And then as soon as I got my master's, then I went independent. Long story behind that. I talk about that. There's a previous episode about an introduction to freelance writing or understanding freelance writing, kind of like a step-by-step thing. You can look it up on bringyourwork.tv, and I tell a lot more of this story. The short version is that I went independent. I've been independent ever since. You see the gray hairs here. I've been doing it for a little while independently. The thing is that I got my master's from, at that time, the #1 journalism school in the country, in America. At that time, it was #1 journalism school. Paid the money, got in, all that stuff, which is tough to get in, got in, handled that, finished my degree. And then if you look at my content since then, it's been very much going from, I'm going to take this master's in magazine publishing and I'm going to write about video games. I'm going to take this master's in magazine publishing and I'm going to become a TED speaker. Like, understanding the rules from, and Northwestern is relatively conservative. It's almost like an Ivy League school in the Midwest. It's over in Chicago. But taking those conservative ideas, those rules, that framework, and saying, I'm going to apply it over here. I'm going to apply it over here. I'm applying it right now when I'm talking to you. even being able to do that research, do that depth, talk about the inverted pyramid or what questions to ask, the who, what, when, where, when, and how. Like I can still say it off the top of my head, even though I haven't been at Northwestern for a very long time. Understanding the rules and then moving on from that. For me, it was very similar with the book publishing world and me learning the rules of the book publishing world, as I talked about earlier in this episode, and me absorbing the game from the many agents that I've worked with, from the publishers I work with, from the martini lunches and dinners that I've had with folks where I'm just absorbing game about the publishing industry with American Society of Journalists and Authors. Shout out to them. I used to be a board member over there. Getting all this game from, again, the traditional system, the traditional journalism system, the traditional publishing industry, and saying, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. The last dozen or so books that I've done leading up to the complete Bring Your Worth collection, all the books in this collection are independent, 100%. No outside money, no investment, nothing. It's just my little hands and my Bring Your Worth company, and that's it. Just my family name. But that, me being able to put a book together, be able to hire an editor, for me to be able to get a cover designer, shout out to Beck Loss, all these wonderful folks that I was able to hire or support or get support from. I understood all those things because I was in the publishing industry for X amount of years. I knew what went into it. Because I knew what went into it, then I was able to start my own publishing company. But I wouldn't have known that as much if I didn't spend time in there. So I think that's a key part as far as disrupting the game. If you're going to disrupt the game, you have to actually be within the system for a certain period of time. Because otherwise, how can you disrupt something that you don't know? I went through this a lot when I was a kid. Shout out to my family who were super patient with me, being a kid and wanting to rebel against this thing or start my own thing. I see that particularly with my two kids and just those discussions. And it's like, but son, I have two sons. It's like, son, you can't disrupt the game if you don't know the game. You can't. You can't say, I'm going to start fresh and do something different, and it's going to make the system irrelevant. You can't quite do that if you don't understand the actual main system, because you're not going to understand what the flaws are. You're not going to understand how to make something better and so forth. Shout out to Nilofer Merchant. I was thinking about her today because of her wonderful book, The Power of Onlyness. You'll see it up there. Oh, if I can reach it without knocking over my Mardi Gras beads. There we go. Good stretch, Damon. Power of Onlyness. Shout out to Nilofer. I hope you're doing wonderful. And she talks about this, where it's and I'll put this in the post notes. So the link isn't down there right now, but now that I'm talking about it, I'll throw the link down there if you're watching the rerun. But you can always catch it at your favorite bookstore. Fantastic book. I have like 5 copies of it, all signed because Nilofer is a homie, so it's a fantastic book. She talks about the difference between a rebel and a leader. One of my favorite quotes. A rebel is someone that says, I'm going to tear this thing down. I'm going to go against the system. A leader is someone that says, I'm going to go ahead and create a new system that's better for everybody. A rebel is against something. A leader is for something. That's the difference. If you're going to be disrupting the system, you can be a rebel, which I've used that word a few times. There's nothing wrong with that word, rebel. I consider myself a rebel in some ways too. However, you have to know what you're rebelling against and what you're actually going for. In Prince's case, he wanted to have more independence as an artist, and he wanted other artists to own their masters, which is intellectual property. Whole other discussion we talked about a lot on this channel. You can catch some of the reruns and so forth. He knew he was going towards something. Kendrick Lamar is another rebel, where someone disrupting the system and saying, there's a higher level of hip hop, there's a higher discussion we can have that's not being had right now. And hip hop communities, as well as the greater music communities or even intellectual communities, aren't being served. I'm going to give a higher level of hip hop, but I'm going to do it within these traditional systems. And I'm going to be pushing against this system because I'm going to understand the system. There's power in that. So that's the second way you can actually reclaim your creative power. The first way, as we talked about at the top of the show, is mastering the game and understanding the system well enough so that you can thrive in it, right? To master it. The second thing that we just talked about is to disrupt the game. That means you're understanding the rules well enough so you know which ones you can properly break. Think again. Shout out to my man, Adam Grant. Fantastic book if we're going to talk about this. That's to do with actually questioning the systems and the things that we have in hand. And I'll go ahead and throw up short form on here again. There it is. Right. So definitely go and check it out. Again, shout out to the sponsor, Short Form. And he has excellent books on this, but my favorite would probably be Think Again. It's like picking your favorite kid. Fantastic series. But he basically talks about how you should question or reconsider. There we go. You likely believe that precise knowledge is valuable and that maintaining strong beliefs shows integrity. Yet social scientist and Warren professor Adam Grant disagrees, arguing that reconsideration or the ability to reconsider your views is much more valuable than knowledge or loyalty to your beliefs. Let me read that again. The ability to reconsider your views is much more valuable than knowledge or loyalty to your beliefs. In other words, if you're going to disrupt the system, you have to understand why you're against the system and what beliefs make that system work. There's a reason why the industries I know the best, there's a reason why the publishing industry is set up the way it is. It could be for questionable cultural reasons, which is a whole nother episode. It could be because the first printing presses were in Philadelphia and in New York. If you know your history, shout out to Ben Franklin. I'm from South Jersey, so I know Philly fairly well. Those were the first printing presses. So of course it's concentrated over on the East Coast, going back 200 and almost 50 years ago now, right? There's reasons for this, but it doesn't mean that those systems are right or correct. It's just what people have been used to doing in the publishing industry for centuries, literally centuries. Your great grandfather actually and grandmother probably saw the same publishing industry that we see today. Think Again is a great book to talk about this, because then you end up saying, okay, what exactly makes sense with this? Like, is this something that's worth keeping? Again, shout out again to Short Form. What makes this worth keeping? Should I go and hold on to this? Do I need this anymore? Because if you're going to disrupt the system, you're going to need to know the foundation, the bricks, the brass tacks. Because you're disrupting something, that means you're probably going to be building something else. If you're building something else, you better be damn sure that you know what the heck you're building. And another episode that talks about this came out a few weeks ago. Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole, Creative Power Strategy. The name says it all. What is your creative power strategy? Are you trying to master the game, disrupt the game, or are you trying to overpower the game? You're trying to learn the rules? You're trying to bend the rules? Or are you trying to make your own rules? We're about to get into make your own rules. But those are the things that you don't think about. After this episode, definitely check out the Michael Jackson one as well as the Drake one here. And I think that would be something that would help out in understanding what's going on. Today we're talking about mastering the game, changing the game, disrupting the game, or overpowering the game. And it is reclaiming your creative power. Again, my name is Damon Brown. I'm an entrepreneurial coach, side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise non-traditional entrepreneur. I'm here to help you as such. BringYourWorth.tv every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You subscribe for free at BringYourWorth.tv. All right, so we talked about some fun stuff so far. Excuse me. Yeah, to the point where I'm actually having gas, which is a good thing. I'm so excited over here. So are you trying to disrupt the game? Are you trying to understand the game well enough so that you can disrupt it later? Are you kind of mastering the game now, understanding the rules, and then maybe you'll disrupt it later? Is this an approach that you've taken? Do you see other artists that are doing those things that are succeeding, or those that have tried to disrupt the game and it didn't quite work out? Maybe even for you. We've all had our ups and downs. Are you still trying to figure out what system works best for you, whether you're trying to master the game and understand the rules, disrupt the game and go against the rules, or overpower the game and create your own rules? Give a shout in the comments. And we're going to be wrapping up with the last big one. How do you overpower the game? That is a fantastic way to handle things. And overpowering the game is where you create enough buzz so that the system shifts towards you. Create enough buzz so that the system shifts towards you. It's really about working outside of the system. And J. Cole, who's considered one of the greatest rappers of the current generation, current generation folks in their 30s. He's a great example of that. One simple example was that when he had one of his last major albums come out, his album came out and then he left the country. He didn't do press or anything like that. The album went to #1 or whatever anyway. It did what it did. And then he left. And then he came back about 6 months later and he did a guest appearance on a major rapper song. And the guest appearance was, I'm a hip hop guy, and guest appearance was insane. It was ridiculously good, ridiculously good. And then he left. he came in the video because they had a video for it. They still do music videos. Did a video for it, and then he left. I know he has a wife and kids. He's really from North Carolina. Shout out to my family down in Durham. But so he's down in North Carolina. So he's down with his wife and kids. Like he has a couple kids, whatever. And then 6 months later, he came back, did the exact same thing. He did that several times over the course of 3 to 4 years. And as rap fanatics and people that really love the art, it was fascinating. The thing in there, though, which you might not catch, is that, yes, he went his own way in hip hop culture in particular, but I would say art in general. You think of the Taylor Swifts, you think of the Drakes we talked about earlier. They're constantly coming out. Like Taylor Swift is prolific. Drake can be prolific, but that's a whole different discussion. We're not going to open that can of worms. But definitely let's look at Taylor Swift. She's prolific. She's writing her stuff. She's coming out with stuff darn near every year. She's motivated. I love when that creative streak comes out. I came out with about 8 books in the past 8 years. So I'm not judging her with the amount of output she's had. I was talking about Prince earlier in this episode. The thing is that one of the reasons why she's able to do the Eras tour, and she's over in London town and other places, shout out to the folks overseas. She's over there right now as we speak. One of the reasons why she's able to do that is because she comes out with stuff so rapidly. That's something that I was kind of hinting at when we were talking about Drake and mastering the game earlier. I mean, you can master the game, which is playing by the rules of the game and being the best within that system. Drake is one of those people. Taylor Swift, until recently, was one of those people too. One of the reasons why she has to keep coming out so much is to stay relevant. J. Cole would fall into the disrupt the game category. He's basically saying, I'm not going to play this game. I think he's in his mid to late 30s. Let's say he's 37. He's like, look, I'm 37. I got a wife. I got babies at home. I think they're young kids. I got babies at home. I'm usually in the Carolinas. I'm not usually in New York. I'm usually in the Carolinas. And I've already gotten some Grammys, and I've already established my base, my 1,000 true fans, but in his case, it's probably 1 million true fans. But I've already got my 1,000 true fans. Shout out to Kevin Kelly. I got my 1,000 true fans. I don't need to come out all the time. I'm going to drop this album, which really was like a mixtape. I'm going to drop this album. And then I'm going to go overseas, and then I'm going to go spend time with my wife and kids. And then, you know what? I like working with this artist over here. So I'm going to hop on the mic with them, and maybe I'll just remind people that I still got it. And I'm going to do a fire verse. I'm going to just kill it in a good way. And then I'm going to go about my business. Oh, I'm going to do it again. Oh, I did it again. So there's a level of independence that comes with that, incoming in your own concentric circle. Jay-Z, who actually originally signed J. Cole way back in the day, probably like a decade plus ago now, he had a very similar method where he, Biggs Burke, as well as Damon Dash, they formed a trifecta, and they said, okay, Jay-Z's the rapper here. Biggs Burke is businessman behind the scenes. And Dame Dash, who's known to be a tough negotiator, as a negotiator, he's the face of the business side. Biggs Burke was very much in the shadow and in the background where he wanted to be. And they couldn't get a deal. They went to Def Jam, who ironically Jay-Z ended up being the head of later on. But they went to Def Jam, all these folks back, I want to say in the mid-90s, early mid-90s. And they were like, no, we're not going to sign you. So they started their own independent label. And they got so big that they're able to negotiate an amazing deal later on with Def Jam. And of course, about a decade and a half later, Jay-Z ended up becoming president of Def Jam for a number of years. The thing is working outside of the system. One of the things I talked about in the newsletter today at joindamon.me. Again, it's free. Feel free to grab it. It comes out every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. p.m. a.m. not p.m. a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. What I talked about today is that building your own following is a great way to overthrow the system, to overpower the system, because you're actually going around the gatekeepers. That's what we're really talking about today. When you're talking about mastering the game, disrupting the game, overpowering the game, we're really talking about the gatekeeper system. Are you going to wait, or are you going to work with the gatekeepers and make sure that they let you in because you're hitting a certain standard based on what they're saying? Are you going to disrupt the gatekeepers, where you're going to work with them for a little bit just to understand the flaws in their system, and then go ahead and topple it from perhaps within the system? Or you're going to overpower the gatekeepers, where you're going to create so much of a buzz. J. Cole did that. Create so much of a buzz. Jay-Z did that, where suddenly the industry says, oh, we want to work with you. And then suddenly you're the gatekeeper. You're the gatekeeper of whatever buzz you're created, whatever music, whatever book, whatever art piece, whatever product, whatever service. Suddenly you become the gatekeeper, but you're not the gatekeeper of other people. You're the gatekeeper of your own work. And suddenly you decide who you want to partner with. Back to the J. Cole example, he's been grinding and building his loyal fan base. And so he comes out with an album. He doesn't have to promote it. Everybody's going to gobble it up. Everyone who's supposed to will gobble it up. He doesn't need to be in the spotlight all the time. He can go and do a single, as they call it, one song. He do a single with a popular artist, and then often outshine that popular artist, and then go back to his house and live a normal life. Excuse me. It's obviously that's what he's architect. I don't know if that was strategy from the beginning, but that's the thing of it. The challenge, if you're going to overpower the system, this is really important, is that you better come correct. You better come correct. To quote Omar from The Wire, the classic show on HBO from a couple of decades ago now. Can't believe it's that old now. But to paraphrase him, if you aim at the king, you better not miss. In other words, you can go ahead and keep playing those games where you say, okay, I'm only going to show up when I want to show up. I know y'all know people like that. As a business coach, I've coached hundreds of people. I've met folks like that. Tried to work with some folks like that, where they say, you know what? I'm not going to work within the system. I'm going to do things my own way. I'm going to sleep in and I'm going to come into work whenever I want to. I said I was going to deliver the product or service at this time, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and not do that right now. You know what? I said I was going to do it this way, but I don't feel like it. I'm going to do it my own way. Forget the laws and the rules to this. Sometimes that works. Oftentimes it does not. And going back to what we talked about with the previous principles, if you don't know why the rules are in place, or going back to the 48 laws of power, shout out to Robert Greene, if you don't know who's really in control, then you don't know what power games you're really playing. And if you're not observant enough, or more importantly, if you're on your own particular vibe, you're just going on vibes, as they say, and you're not delivering the quality product or service, you're going to be in trouble from the gatekeepers, because they're not going to like that you're not playing the rules. That's the thing with gatekeepers. They don't like that. The rules are there for a reason, whether it's just for structure or just to prevent chaos. Those rules are there for a reason. There's a reason why with traditional publishing, they usually, the publishers, or the publishers, specifically the editors at the publishing companies, will only hear from writers who have agents, because there's a gatekeeper system. You go in and you pitch the agent whatever book idea you have. If the agent co-signs you, the agent will take you around to the editors. If the editor co-signs you, then the publisher, who often is a real person, it's not just a company. The publisher is often a real person. The publisher co-signs on it, and suddenly you have a book deal. But you see the three levies you have to go through, they're there for a reason. That's a level of protection. That's a level of saving the energy. They figured by the time you get through these 3 layers, then your shit must be good. Pardon my French. But they're there, but it doesn't mean that they're always fair. So if you're circumventing those things, if you're flaunting those things, the people that are in charge, those gatekeepers, might not like it. So if you're aiming for the king, you bet not miss, straight up. So you better make sure that your stuff is hot. That's one level of it with the gatekeepers. But you're getting it from the other side too. The other side are the people that you're serving. I remember, I'm not even going to mention the artist. I remember an artist came up with something. I was so looking forward to it. I bought the thing. And then within about 3 to 4 weeks, they said that was a rough draft and they changed it. I was mad because they didn't warn anybody. They just said, no, you know what I came out with wasn't really the final. It wasn't like, hey, well, I'll give you your money back. No. They said, oh no, this is the product. Okay, great. No, actually, that was the beta, but I still got your money. And in fact, I'm probably using that money to come up with the real version that came out later. I know I wasn't the only one that was upset. I'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna put the artist on blast, but it's a shame. And that I lost so much trust. So I'm like, here's my money. You know, I had babies at the time, so it was like quite a while ago. It's like, here's my money. I'm trusting that you're gonna serve me in a certain way. And then you come in and it's like, no. Hey, thank you for coming through. It's like, no. This isn't the thing. This isn't the real thing. How does that make me feel? I'm talking about it. This was years ago. I'm still talking about it to this day. I still don't trust this artist because I don't believe them anymore. They were working outside of the system. They were overpowering the system, doing direct hand-to-hand, same stuff that I do. You know, I'm publishing this. If anything's wrong with this, it's my fault. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you got beef with the Complete Bringworth collection. I'm here. I'm here every Wednesday. Come through. You can drop me a DM, drop me an email. I'm outside, as they say. If you're going to be overpowering the system, you actually are the system. That's what I'm trying to say. And if you're going against the traditional system, like a J. Cole, like a Jay-Z, like someone like myself, where I have my own publishing company, and I'm still cool with the agents, editors, and publishers, other folks that I've worked with. We still have lunch and coffee and drinks and all that. We're still cool, but they know I'm on some other stuff. But that means the responsibility lies completely with you. You have no system to rely on. Worse than that, if you're dependent at all in a traditional system, you know, whether it's a streaming platform like Spotify, which is a popular one nowadays, a traditional publishing system like Ingram, which, you know, does book publishing, and they actually print a lot of my books and so forth, and you buck the system, your stuff has to be at such a high level. Again, back to the J. Cole example. He was able to disappear in North Carolina. Is pretty woodsy, so I'm not being dramatic here. He's able to go ahead, come out with a hot album, and go back into the woods in North Carolina, and then come back 6 months later, drop another hot thing, hop on somebody's album, do a guest appearance. You know, the equivalent of, if you don't know music as well, it's the equivalent of when they used to have the guest appearances on TV shows back in the 70s and 80s, right? It's like guest appearance of so-and-so, and it's Isaac from the Love Boat, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Coming in, doing that guest appearance, and you know your guest appearance is going to be that hot that you can just leave Hollywood for 6 months and do another guest appearance. That's what J. Cole's been doing to a lesser extent. That's what Jay-Z's been doing, more so back in the day when he first started a few decades ago. You got to make sure that your stuff is correct if you're going to take this approach. I cannot emphasize it more. So what I've essentially done with my own career has gone through all three. I've mastered the game, and that was from my time in traditional publishing. That was my time of working with the TED conference and learning a lot about public speaking. That was my time getting my master's in magazine publishing from Northwestern, again, the #1 journalism school of that year. The reason why I bring that up is because it was considered the pinnacle of conservative, not politically, but as far as the structure of journalism. I learned from them. And then I went in and learned all the rules that I didn't want to keep. Or sorry, let go of all the rules that I didn't want to keep. I was like, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to write that way. I'm not going to write that way. And then now I'm to the point after learning from all of the games from different folks, I'm able to have my own publishing company, have my own TV show, and have my own coaching practice, even do some of my independent public speaking. All those things come from understanding the systems well enough over time. And so that's what I'm going to be clear about. You don't need to be wedded to these particular systems. Just know what your strategy is and stick to it for a little while and see where it gets you. A lot of people that I coach will have one strategy. They'll do it literally for like a week or a month, and they'll be like, oh, it's not working. I'm going to go this other way. The only thing that does is confuse your brand and confuses your idea. It confuses you. The best thing you can do is figure out what works best for you and then going from there. As far as overpowering the game, one of my favorite books that talks about this is Big Magic. Shout out to Elizabeth Gilbert. Fantastic book. It's about creativity, but more importantly, getting insight and inspiration from outside traditional sources. That's why it's called Big Magic. It's nothing. It's nothing like what's the word I'm looking for? As they say, woo woo or anything like that, or spiritual even about it. It's more about where do we get our ideas from, and what's the subtitle? Creative Living Beyond Fear. I love that. Creative Living Beyond Fear. You're going to have to do creative living beyond fear if you're going to overpower the system. Because essentially, whatever you create has to overpower, be so overwhelming and so good, so necessary to not only the people that you serve, but to the economic market climate in general. The reason why I'm able to have a publishing company is folks like y'all say, Damon, keep making books, and you keep showing up to BringWord.tv for it. We're going on 400 episodes, so thank you. But that allows me to do that. If you guys weren't rocking with this, didn't care about the books, then I wouldn't be making a living, and I wouldn't be talking to y'all right now. But that's required if you're going to overpower the game. A lot of those insights come from this book. A lot of those are talked about here. There's some other fantastic books, but this is a really good place to start. Big Magic is fantastic. It's also available on Shortform. And let me go ahead and I believe it's available on Shortform. It should be. Sorry, my computer's running a little bit slow today. It's like, what are you doing? Here it is. Let me get you on the stage here. There we go. Big Magic. Boom. Again, great opportunity. If you're coming in late, this is sponsored by Shortform. You can actually go and learn more about them at shortform.com/Damon. I have a deal where free trial of Shortform and then 20% off your annual subscription. Shortform takes all the good stuff from these different books, a lot of popular books, and even some less popular books. I was surprised they were on there. All the things that I have on my shelf, most of those books are actually on Shortform. And it not only gives a description of what's going on in the book, but also breaks down the chapters. You can highlight the ideas and so forth. As you can see, you have the one-page summary. You also have the chapters. As I talked about at the top of the show, you have this great opportunity to, I know this book by heart. I listen actually to the audiobook a lot. But if there's a specific thing, like there's one specific thing about the idea of a muse floating from one willing party to another willing party. And if you don't act on that inspiration, it's going to go to another artist. I remember the concept. I can talk about the chapter, the way Elizabeth Gilbert is killer with words, the way she describes it, but I can't remember which chapter it was in. There's a great opportunity to say, oh, okay, which chapter was it? Okay, this is the chapter. And I believe it was chapter 3, as is Creative Fears. And it breaks it down, done, and then highlighting the particular things. So fantastic opportunity. Again, you're more than welcome to go and check it out. Sponsor of our show. I have a special deal with them. And sorry, we throw the link up as well. Right there, check it out. But you can check out Big Magic on there. You can also, of course, grab it at the link below if you already know that you're rocking with the book. And it's a really good opportunity to go ahead and learn more about the books before you actually purchase them. And you can purchase them directly through the platform. your creative power strategy. I have a sorry for the mess with the link. I think my tech's a little wonky today. It's about 110 here in Vegas. I think it's messing with the tech a little bit. About to call the power company, be like, yo, what's going on? But I'm glad that we have AC because man, shout out to y'all that are dealing with the fans. Bless your hearts. That's a rough place to be right now. Listen though, I have a whole playlist that I've created about your creative power strategy that's based on the concepts that we talked about today. In this playlist, it's the what we talked about at the top of the show with Michael Jackson, Prince, as well as Jay-Z, as well as the more recent episode with Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole, as well as deep dive episodes, particularly on Prince. Fascinating history, fascinating guy. Rest in peace to the purple one. But I've done whole long episodes about his business strategies, which are just brilliant and way ahead of their time. Back when I was a kid, he was doing stuff that we wouldn't figure out until now. And again, you see my gray hairs. That was a long time ago, and he was already killing it. Lots of episodes from that. From Beyonce, a lot of her strategy is amazing. Martha Stewart, even. Be sure and check out the playlist if you're looking to do that. If you weren't sure about which videos to start with, I gave two videos. Again, the Michael Jackson one as well as the Drake one. They're all listed below. But if you're like, I don't know which one to start with, whatever, just click the link on the on the playlist, and you got literally hours of videos that you can just dig into and get deeper into the stuff that we're talking about. And I think that's what's beautiful about all the systems that we have is that there's really no wrong way to reclaim your creative power. You can master the game, you can disrupt the game, or you can overpower the game. And the number one thing with mastering the game is understand the rules so that you can get things done within a mainstream traditional manner. There's no shame in that. Again, I was in the traditional publishing industry for a while. I've been in other traditional industries such as journalism for a while. Nothing wrong with that. Even if you eventually want to go independent, there's a lot of strength in that. The other side of it, though, is that the more you master the game, the less likely you're going to be able to leave the game. And so keep that in mind as you take that approach. You could disrupt the game. Disrupt the game means learn the rules well enough so that you can actually pick and choose them or rebel against them. Now, the beautiful part about that is that you can learn these particular systems and then go off on your own and then be able to build them, such as, again, me having a publishing company. I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't in the traditional publishing world, or at least that road would be a lot longer. The key thing, though, is that you actually do need to take the time to understand the particular rules and ideas and understand why things are. If you don't understand why things are, then it's going to be really difficult to do. And that sounds like a rough road, because some of us end up taking the hard way and then realizing why those rules are in place in the first place. There was someone that came up with that rule in the first place because they did what you're planning on doing ages ago. You might as well learn from them. That's why shout out to Shortform again for sponsoring. That's why reading books and literature and listening to podcasts is so important, because you don't want to have to make the same mistakes. And lastly, you can overpower the game, create enough buzz so that the system has to shift towards you. Now, of course, that's beautiful where you're able to do things independently and not have to worry about gatekeepers as much. But the fact is that a lot of us, even those that are independent, such as myself, I'm about as independent as you can get. I'm still dependent on YouTube to a certain extent, to Amazon, to the people who physically publish these books. Again, shout out to Ingram and other folks. It's not from a place of resentment or anything, but recognizing you can only get so independent. But then that's the other side of it, is that if you're going to overpower the system, you better make sure that your stuff is amazing. You better make sure that you have built your audience, because you essentially become the system. And you're the one that's going to have to follow through. It's going to be your face that's going to be representing the product. And I think it's so important to recognize that. So whether you master the game, disrupt the game, or overpower the game, I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, but you have to be thoughtful as far as how you're going to strategize those things. But thank you so much for coming through today. Let me know if you have any last minute questions in the comments, or even in the reruns of this episode. I do read the comments, so feel free to jump in there. And I love to hear your perspective. Maybe even down the line, we'll do a follow-up episode talking about how you mastering the game disrupting the game or overpowering the game, how that's working out for you. Maybe we'll do a check-in in the upcoming months. Again, I'm Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a not-traditional entrepreneur. The heat's starting to get to me. Bring Your Worth TV every Wednesday live at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. I already know there will actually not be a live episode next week because got a lot of family stuff going on. Of course, it's the holiday season here in the United States. So be safe out there, have fun. Grill if it's not too hot outside for you guys, or just grill inside. Most people got a broiler, just broil inside. Do that. And shout out again to my sponsor, Shortform. You can actually get their free trial, unlimited access to all their books, products, and all that stuff for a limited time, and also get 20% off if you're interested in getting their annual subscription. So shout out to them. Thank you for making this episode possible. Until next time, remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.